can I just go to an issue of infrastructure, I guess? That gets Mr Murdoch's attention, since I mentioned the word infrastructure. Can I go to Mr Skidmore? I just want to talk to you about the situation at Melbourne Airport, which I and pilots that I've spoken to regard as an increasingly concerning situation, a serious situation. There was a loss of separation between aircraft taking off at Melbourne and Essendon Airport on the 12th of November 2013 over a significant period of time. Well, there's a loss of communications, and I think the ATSB calculated 12 likely losses of separation or separation assurance. There was a nighttime LASO double go-around at Melbourne Airport on the 5th of July, a loss of separation between two aircraft taking off at Melbourne and an air traffic helicopter operating at Essendon Airport on Australia Day this year. And over the weekend, I received information from people that wrote into me about incidents that occurred on the 14th of December 2013, where a constituent reported the aircraft touched the wheels at Melbourne Airport and then took off in what he describes as a manoeuvre akin to something in the Top Gun movie, and the pilot then came on the PA to say that he had to take that evasive action, otherwise he would have, quote, or words to the effect of, collected a Virgin aircraft on the ground. This is LASO. And another constituent that today advised me of an incident on the 22nd of December 2015 JQ-710 aircraft that did a go-around at the last minute, and that passengers were concerned about the closeness, the proximity of the other aircraft. There's a growing demand. I guess my first preliminary question is, if an aircraft does touch the ground and then takes off again, is that something that would normally go to ATSB, and you would be in the loop on that?
I think it would depend on the circumstances involved in regards to that, Senator. I do flights in my little aircraft and I do touch and goes all the time, but this is not the case you're talking about.
No.
But it's a situation where if they have to do a go-round, they apply power and they've made a safe decision to go round. In regards to the investigation on that, there should have been a report, in which case it would have been followed up and investigated.
Sure. But you review those reports in terms of, you keep an eagle eye on those reports to see whether any safety regulations need to be dealt with?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, okay. The issue is, just looking at a graph that has been provided to me about Melbourne aircraft annual aircraft movements, and just to give you a rough idea, that it says that goes from, in 2000, about 173,000 aircraft movements. With 2015, it's about 235,000 aircraft movements. Do you have a concern that Melbourne Airport might be bursting at the seams, that they might just, or if not bursting at the seams, under increasing pressure to cope with a number of movements, given that it doesn't have parallel runways, given that it does have land and hold short operations?
Could I seek a clarification, Senator Zinnerman?
Sure. You're the chair.
I mean,
do anything you want.
If I've got a single engine 172 or something, you used to be able to land at Mascot. You can't anymore. Can you land at... Are we talking about those sort of aircraft doing this touch and go?
No, I was talking about a commercial aircraft.
Did the touch and go?
Basically. It had to do a go-around, but...
Yeah, but what size was the plane?
I think it was a 737.
Oh, right.
Okay. I take it you can't land a 150 at bloody Tullamarine.
No.
Unless you get approval, Senator.
Yeah.
I think the question was in regards to bursting at the seams of Melbourne Airport. I don't know what the capacity, I must admit, I don't know what the capacity of Melbourne Airport is in regards to the number of movements or how much it can handle. It would be something that Melbourne Airport would be monitoring all the time. And we would, from CASA's point of view, would be monitoring the system in place in regards to Melbourne Airport and conducting surveillance and audits as necessary. I can refer again to Peter Cromarty from my airspace and aerodrome regulator.
But can I do that? I'm just considering time constraints because I do want to touch on another issue. But, having had a look at Melbourne Airport's master plan, it describes a number of ways that the airport seeks to further increase aircraft movements, increasing apron areas, extending runways, optimising exit ramps and the like. Doesn't say anything about parallel runway, which appears to be best practice. Is that something that CASA would have a view on, to say, this is starting to get really pushing the envelope in terms of in terms of an optimal safety performance. I think Mr. Cremati might be keen to say something.
I might allow Peter to
While you're
answer.
doing that, are we talking about cross-runway landings?
Yeah, the lasso, that's part of it.
Fuck, that's risky shit.
I hope, Hans, I didn't get the first word that you said then, Chair.
No, but
If I may invite my executive manager from Airspace and Aerodromes. Peter?
Thank you, Director. The traffic at any aerodrome can become busier and busier, and as you're well aware, at the peak periods, the delays increase, and so if aircraft want to operate at that aerodrome, then they have to operate in the quieter periods. Otherwise, they get continually delayed until they can land or take off. So eventually, when the airport becomes full throughout the day, then what do? It's a commercial decision of the airport operator to decide whether they put another runway in.
But doesn't CASA have a role to say, we think you're operating to the limits of your capacity, no more, or you need to modify? I mean, for instance, and I'm grateful for the fact that after a number of weeks of agitation last year, that I think that the lasso evening operations have been suspended until March of this year. That's right. After you assessed,
After discussions with Air Services.
Yes, that's right.
We were aware of the incident. We had a discussion with Air Services. They put forward an option in regards to working with us and suspending the operations till they can resolve.
Right. So, at what stage do you consider the issues of, Melbourne Airport's a privatised entity, has been for a number of years, not being critical of them per se, but they've got a job to do for their shareholders. But at what point do you say that there's a competition? And I'm not picking on Melbourne Airport, but there's always going to be that tension between commercial interests, maximising returns, and the role of CASA to say this really might be pushing the envelope. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying there must be a point where that intersects. The commercial interests may intersect from time to time with safety concerns.
I think that's a very good question, Senator. It's one of those circumstances where we'd have to, based on the assessments that we're doing, based on the discussion with the operators and with Air Services, who are intimately involved in it as well, to see where we're getting to in regards to that. But it still comes down to a commercial decision regarding the airport in regards to any infrastructure development that they might do. What we will do is monitor from our point of view to ensure that they're operating within accordance with the regulations that have been established.
Senator, sorry, I was just going to give you some timeframes for Melbourne Airport, as you know, is now progressing the parallel runway project. The current indications are the Australian Government's now working with Melbourne Airport on the land acquisition required through a compulsory acquisition process. That will take some time. The intention at this stage, I'm advised, is they will lodge their major development plan and environmental assessment process early next year with a view to the runway being available in the early 2020s. I think as the Director has outlined, and probably also an issue for Air Services.
So we're about 10 years away from another runway, 8 years?
But within that framework, then obviously the aviation safety authorities and the air traffic service provider will work with the airlines in terms of the safety arrangements to apply. You've seen one of those actions already with the position CAS has taken on land and hold short at night. So those sort of measures, if you look at the trajectory of, say, Sydney before the parallel runway, the way it also used to operate land and hold short and then move to restrictions. So there are safety mitigation measures, including traffic flow measures, which are all put in place. And certainly the industry is accelerating the development of the parallel runway. So I think the safety of
the Wagners to give you a quote.
I think they certainly have an impressive record with the one they've done. So I think if I can encapsulate from the portfolio perspective, there's certainly a safety management critical system which is built around the infrastructure. There's no doubt of that until such time as the infrastructure can be upgraded.
I guess the point is, and I can direct this to you, and I'm grateful for that, is that there seem to be more and more incidents. There seems to be greater concern. Pilots that I speak to say that they just don't like it, that there just seems to be, under more and more pressure with an increasing number of movements, do you get to a point to say you need to either restrict the number of movements or expedite, or a combination of expediting the parallel runway being built?
I think it's a combination of expediting the construction of the parallel runway, which is underway, as well as safety management systems through Air Services and CASA, which basically, if not restrict the flow, then certainly manage the flow.
Well, it might have to restrict flow.
It may come to that in terms of maintaining runway movements.
The last operations, the restriction of last operations in the evenings, obviously has restricted the flow, but presumably that was as a result of a compelling safety case.
It was as a result of our discussions with Air Services to say we were concerned in regards to the incident. They said they were taking steps to mitigate those concerns, which was part of that was suspension of LASO until we can get to a stage where we've got a system in place that can manage it better.
Because I want to touch on another issue, which is, I think, quite important. I just could you, on notice, provide us with details of the correspondence between, the process involved between CASA and Air Services Australia in relation to this? Because I've had long-standing interest in Air Services to that. Just